A 300-year-old elephant tusk, a cannon and some human bones are just some of the hundreds of relics that were found at sea or washed up on the shores of the UK last year. A BBC Freedom of Information request shows more than 300 items were declared to the official government body for offshore wrecks and salvage. Rebecca Ricks has been finding out more.
Below the surface lies an often haunting history, and some of the treasures found deep down are more unusual than others.
I just saw something poking out the mud, and it was just a little bit too smooth to be a piece of rock or wood. And I put my hand down and grabbed it, and I thought, I think I know what this is. And when I leaved it out, the sand cracked in a big semicircle. And that's when I realised that I've got an elephant's tusk.
And now it's hanging in his pub in Kent. Surprisingly, it's not the only elephant tusk declared in recent years. Off the coast of Falmouth in 2019, another was filmed being brought up from a ship from the 1600s, thought to be linked to the slave trade.
And here it is.
Wow. Bringing it to dry land was just the start.
You have to get the salt out of them. If the objects are allowed to dry, the salt forms crystals on the inside, and quite often the object will fall apart. It needs to go into a museum. But because it's ivory, because it's associated with the slave trade, finding a home for it has been difficult.
The receiver's list is fascinating. Ejector seat parts, a bomb shackle, human bones, mammoth bones, and even a 2.5-ton bronze French-made cannon from the 17th century.
Not to mention the statues, the ship's bells, the crockery and the iron swords. If you find something from a wreck, you have a duty to report it in 28 days or face a possible fine. In Southampton, the receiver of wreck is working through a backlog.
When something is reported to us, we have a year to find an owner for that item, and then what we do is we negotiate between the owner and with the finder. But of course, some of the items brought up, some of the most common items, things like portholes, they won't have a great monetary or historical value unless you know the name of the wreck it's come from. We've had things like beer vats that have been reported to us, gas masks. On one occasion, we even had a jacuzzi which had fallen off of a super yacht.
Well, sometimes the things found at sea are a little too big to be stored indoors. This anchor is thought to weigh about 2.5 tons, and for the last 2 years, it's been living in this hedge.
The 19th century Trotman anchor was caught in Richard's fishing nets. Now in Brixham, Richard is still waiting on a decision from the receiver.
We've been stuck with it now since then, waiting for the receiver of wreck to give us the go-ahead to be able to get rid of it, to try and claim back some of the expense we've had.
In 30 years of fishing, it wasn't Richard's only unusual find.
Probably one of the funniest was a kipper packed in a vacuum pack with a knob of butter ready to be served. Cows, sheep. The sea is still a very mysterious place.
The dredging industry has been doing its bit too, identifying culturally important items.
I think for us, some of the oldest are the Paleolithic finds. So we have had some really amazing finds that date back to the Middle Paleolithic period. So everything from hand axes to like mammoth teeth. It's just really incredible to be the first person to touch something in, say, 300,000 years.
Our coastlines are a treasure trove of history and riches. There's no doubt the curiosities will continue to land in the hands of people for decades to come. Rebecca Ricks, BBC News, Devon.